Thanks, Grant, for letting me come over and BS with you.
It's always a pleasure to talk with you because you're a hunter just like me, and we always have stories to exchange.
Yeah, hunters always have endless stories.
Yeah, for sure.
So, how old were you when you got into hunting?
Actually, my dad, who divorced my mother when I was very young, was the mentor. He and my uncle, they took my brother and I under their wing and started us hunting and fishing when I was 10 years old. Couldn't carry a gun, but I followed my dad around and finally got to carry the old 30-30 when I was 12 years old, but I couldn't get away from my dad. I still had. But anyway, it was let's see, I guess that was in 1951, 52. In those days, it was kind of funny. We would go to St. Paul and Tacoma, which is now it was Champion, and now it's Hancock.
Right.
Well, it was St. Paul and Tacoma, and then St. Regis, and then Champion, and now Hancock. But anyway, we would drive up there in the morning. My dad would pick us up at our home where I lived in Milton, and my dad and uncle would pick Carl and I up, and we'd go sit at the gate, at the King Creek gate, until they would open the gate, which would be maybe 2 o'clock in the morning, and then you'd disperse, go find your place to camp for the weekend. And gosh, we did that every season for probably till I was 16 years old. But it was back in those days, it was the old crusher hat that when it rained, you got the red streaks down your face,
Right.
and a plastic raincoat. And if you got warm at all, it was as wet inside as it was outside from
sweat.
But that was and you made your sandwich in the morning, you get out of the tent and made your sandwich in the morning, and you put it in the bag and stuck it inside your shirt, and off you went.
You didn't even have backpacks.
Oh, there was no such thing back then. Well, maybe there was, but it wasn't anything that my dad or uncle were used.
So when you guys got an animal, how did you get it out?
Drug it. We hunted an old railroad grade. It was a big horseshoe railroad grade, and it was pretty easy dragging. And those deer aren't like those big muleys in eastern Washington or Montana or whatever. But and there were deer around, but they weren't real plentiful. They were hard to come by. But we got our share, I guess. One of the times hunting there was what was that big storm they had there, Columbus Day storm, and that was in the 50s. And we camped at the end of the grade, and during the night that storm came up, and there was jack firs up and down the grade where we camped. It was a big open spot. We camped there every year, but there weren't any big trees. But there was a lot of course, trees out beyond. But boy, during the night that wind came up and it blew over trees, and another fellow was supposed to come in and meet us hunting, and we couldn't get out of there for 3 days because the trees had blown over the roads, and they had to cut their way in so we could get out.
Wow.
But it was quite a storm. It's kind of been in the history books, the Columbus Day storm here in Washington. But that was one of the events, of being there.
Cool. And you've been hunting ever since, right?
Ever since. I kind of got away from big game hunting for a few years. Got really into bird hunting, and hunted birds for, I don't know, maybe 20 years, pretty hard. We'd do some big game hunting, but primarily I was into pheasant hunting and some duck and goose hunting. But I kind of got back into it again, back into big game hunting. The the pheasant hunting kind of went away. We hunted in the lower Yakima Valley, Sunnyside area, and we had opportunity to hunt some really good ground. We were friends with a farmer over there and had a heck of a good pheasant camp. And the pheasants just kind of went away. You know, they changed crops, more field corn, more grapes, more apples. We hunted a lot of asparagus. And so I kind of got back into big game hunting, and my brother lived next to a man whose relatives lived in Montana, and through them we were invited to come to Montana, and we started hunting Montana. Oh gosh, I don't know, 22, 3 years ago, and we've hunted pretty much every year that we get drawn. I think I've only gone 2 years not being drawn over there.
Last year was one of those years.
Last year was one of those years, and it's harder every year.
Right.
The application was up like 22% last year. I think probably because of COVID, guys going to be hunters and getting out,
Right.
going, or just wanting to get away.
Yeah, I know, because I didn't get drawn this year.
Yeah, that's too bad because we enjoyed your company.
So what's your favorite hunt? Do you have one?
Gosh, you know, I've got some crazy hunts.
Yeah.
I ran hounds with my hunting and fishing partner now. He's 82, and I'm a couple of years younger. But we've been friends since 1965, and we've hunted and fished, ran hounds together, and one of the hunts, which was kind of impromptu, there was back then in the 80s there was open dumps. Wasn't like now, you know, there was open dumps in areas, and we would take the young hounds and train them. We'd go into the dumps, and there was always raccoons in the dumps, and we would take a couple of old dogs and go to the dump, and usually, you know, at dusk or whatever. But we went to this dump and turned the old dogs loose, and the young dogs, of course, follow the old dogs, and they don't really know what they're doing. But all of a sudden, they opened, started baying, and gosh, they were gone. We thought, now that's kind of crazy, because usually the raccoons will tree. You know, they might go 50 yards, but they'll tree. And gosh, they were just out of sight. And it was early snow, and we went down to the dump and started looking around. Here's bear tracks, and we're like, oh my gosh, you know, this is not good. So we listened, drove around, listened. Finally, we heard the dogs. There's a big swamp down in the valley. We heard the dogs down in there. So we drove around and tried to get close to them and listen and go into them. And so we thought we heard him, and it was back on the other side of the swamp. So we took off. And back in those days, it was getting pretty dusk. And back in those days, you had the old 6-cell flashlights. You know? And so we had a 22 single 6 pistol and a shotgun with bird shot. In fact, I think it was like a trap load or something. It wasn't high base. So we took off with the shotgun and the pistol and headed back in towards where we could hear the dogs. Well, we got in pretty close, and the bear had bayed up on the ground. So we figured it wasn't a very small bear, because usually the big bears will bay up and they won't treat.
Right.
So by then it was getting pretty dark. So I turned the flashlight on, and first thing I did was I fell down and broke the flashlight in two.
Oh no.
But I still had the batteries and everything, so Al's in front of me. So we're going to get back in, and back in the timber. There's snow on the ground, and there's light patches, dark patches. Had to wade through the swamp up to our knees in a couple of places, and got back into where the dogs were bait this bear up. So we got back in there, and he said, "Okay," he said, I'm up in front of you with the shotgun, and you come behind me, and when I tell you, I'll step aside, and you turn the light on." Well, I could put the light together and hold it, and it would go on. So he said, "Okay." So I turned the light on, and there was two of the old dogs. They were just hassling the bear. Anyway, that bear saw that light, and he came right, just charged Al. Al came up with a shotgun, and boom! And it was probably 10, 12 feet. Rolled the bear over backwards. We thought, that's it. But the bear rolled up against a stump, and the dogs, of course, jumped on it. And then he was there trying to bite the dog and everything. So we ran over with the pistol and shot him behind the ear. But we skinned that bear out, and that shotgun shot we figured it would blow the back of his skull up. It just followed the back of his skull and went down. It just made a trail, which is pretty amazing, you know, as powerful as a shotgun is, but with the trap load, you know.
Right.
But it took his eye out, and that was it. And he has that bear hide hanging on his wall today.
Yeah.
And it was pretty exciting time, you know. And we ended up getting the dogs back, and it was I think by the time we got out of there, it was like midnight,
Right.
and of course it was a work week and had to go to work next day. But it was an experience, one of those hound hunting.
Right.
But as far as deer hunting, gosh, you know, I've had some really good experience in deer hunting. I've packed a lot. I packed in Idaho, Montana, Washington, with Al, my hunting partner, and Gloria. We've gone on a lot of pack trips, just pack trips. She's hunted with me in Montana and has been able to get her deer every year over there. Well, you know what it's like over there. It's a pretty special place.
Yes, for sure.
It's a pretty special place.
Yes.
We're able to hunt over there. But I don't know if I really have any special deer hunts. They're all special. They're all, you know, each one is a different experience, and that's why you go hunting.
Right.
For the experience.
Right.
And it's I guess if you're brought up in the hunting field, you know, then you that's kind of your thing.
Right.
You don't think about doing anything else or not hunting anymore. Generally, if you start hunting, you're going to be a hunter. You're not going to give it up.
Right. So, would you say that is your why for the experience of?
Yeah, I just love being outdoors. You know, people go hiking. Why do they go hiking? To be outdoors,
Right.
to get out in nature, get away from the crowds.
Right.
We as hunters, we do the same thing, but we have a purpose. You know, we're hikers.
Right.
With the intent of harvesting an animal,
Right.
and sometimes we do and sometimes we don't.
Right.
But it's the experience of being out there.
Right.
You know, it's just kind of special. You look forward to it every year.
Right.
I remember when I was a kid, you could write a note to the teacher that you were going hunting, and they would excuse you from school to go hunting.
Yeah.
Which is kind of crazy.
That doesn't happen nowadays.
Oh,
that's
no.
for sure.
No, you know, and so things have really changed. Technology has really changed the hunting industry. I mean, really changed. You know, back, like I said, when I started, it was the old buckhorn sights. My dad, till the day he quit hunting, shot a .32 Remington with an octagon barrel, and that was his weapon of choice.
Right.
And my uncle on the other hand, he kind of stepped up and bought a 30-06 bolt action and had a scope on it. And my dad said, I'm not buying one of those damn things with a scope on it.
Right.
So, but he had to learn how to shoot left-handed. He was fishing on the Puyallup River and got a snag and pulling on the line, straight forward, and it came loose, but the swivel stayed, and it come back and stuck in his right eye, and he lost like 50% of his vision in his right eye. So he had to learn how to shoot left-handed, which was fine with that lever action.
Right.
So he made it.
Just kept going.
Just kept
Didn't
going.
stop it.
Yeah.
That's cool. So this deer up here on the wall, you said that was from Idaho?
Yeah.
Where at?
Well, it's down out of Boise, up towards Idaho City, and we turned off at a big reservoir. I can't think of the name of the reservoir, and go back into towards a little town of Atlanta, which is an old mining town. After a while, it's a 2-lane dirt road getting back in there. But we hunted in an area called Queen Creek, and we hunted there for I don't know how many years. My hunting partner Al and I packed in with horses, and I had a little mule. But we were riding up a trail, and there was some snow on the ground, and I happened to look up on this open hillside and saw a deer up there. And I told Al, he was right in front of me, I said, there's a deer up there, but I don't know what it is. So we got off, and he said, it looks like a buck. So we got off and put the binoculars, and he said, hey, it's a buck, it's a big buck. And it was my turn to shoot because I saw the deer. So he said, well, shoot it. And I said, gosh, I can't shoot that far. And he said, well, try it anyway. So anyway, I found a tree branch, and he held on the horses, and I found a tree branch, and boom. And it went down, but it looked like it lunged, and we didn't know if it was, a good shot or if it just lunged because it was that bullet. So he said, well, you stay down below, and I'll go up the hill and see if I can find where it went. So I'm watching up the hill, and I'm walking, and he's going along the hillside, and he said, I found the blood trail. Okay. So he's looking for it, and he said, I don't see it anywhere, but it looked like it went down the hill. So I'm looking. Finally, I look about 50 yards in front of me, and there it was. I was intent up here, and it had slid down the hill and was laying there in some brush deader than a doornail.
Oh, that's funny.
And so we ranged it. It was 420 yards. And I told him, I said, I can't shoot that far. My gun can, but
right.
But I'm not that good of a shot to.
Well, obviously you were.
Well, yeah, that day. but to see a deer that far away, I don't know if I would have the opportunity again. I might take it, but generally, that's way out of my range.
Right.
Like I said, my gun will do it, but I'm not that good a shot.
So you mentioned that the difference from back in the day to now, hunting-wise, is technology. What advice would you give younger hunters now, knowing what you've been through hunting?
Gosh, I think for a young hunter to get into hunting, and to be around weapons, I think probably safety would be utmost as far as getting started.
Right.
Handling a weapon would be, because going hunting is one thing, but safety to go hunting is something else. You want to emphasize that when you're out there, you pull the trigger, you make damn well sure that what your target is,
Right.
And I think it's a great opportunity for young kids, but unless they have a mentor, generally a young person is not boy or girl.
Right.
is not going to say, well, I'm going to go be a hunter. They have to have a mentor, and I think you would get a lot more young people involved. They do have archery classes, shooting classes, and so on in some of the school districts, and that's kind of a start. It might get them thinking about it,
Right.
but it's a tough deal for the younger generation nowadays, and it's too bad because just like Gavin, you know, they like to hunt. I mean, they like to hike. I think Gavin will eventually end up being a hunter because his dad is.
Well, I'm taking him turkey hunting next
Yeah,
spring, so
right.
he better be ready.
Right. And so a mentor,
Right.
you know, you have to have a mentor. I was fortunate to have my dad, who didn't raise me, but he wanted, I guess, to follow his experiences in the woods and whatever.
Right.
So I was lucky. My brother and I both. My dad was instrumental in us hunting, us fishing.
Mhm.
Until he had another family with another wife, and when his second family grew up, then we but we were old enough then. We lived in Milton, and my brother and I would grab our shotguns and walk down to Milton Flats, where I-5 is now.
Right.
That was our duck hunting area down there, and we'd go down there in the mornings. Fishing, we had one bicycle. We'd pedal each other, one on the handlebars. We'd go clear down to Clark's Creek on the Puyallup River and fish.
Right.
We had the old cane rods and Winona reel. You know, we were 10, 12 years old, but I think because we had a mentor
Right.
that instilled on us that was the thing to do. And of course, gosh, I have a picture of my dad and uncle and their friend in downtown Puyallup with 3 deer on the hood. Of course, back then that's what you did. You tied them over the fender on the hood or whatever.
Right.
But it goes back. Our hunting heritage goes back a long ways. So we're fortunate, and I hope that Gavin will, and I'm sure he will. And it's maybe he'll have a friend who becomes a good friend and maybe wants to go hunting, and it'll be instrumental in his friends taking up hunting or fishing.
Well, that's part of the reason I'm doing this series is one, to share stories from, you know, guys like yourself, but also maybe some kid will be scrolling through YouTube, and you never know what can spark the fire. You know what I mean?
Right.
Yeah, it's definitely different than it was back in the day.
Gosh,
I know
yeah, it is. You know, and there are a lot of hunters, and there's not as much hunting area, so it makes it hard for today's hunter to hunt on public land because everyone else is hunting on public land.
Right.
So if you're fortunate enough to have some place to hunt on private land, which most people aren't that fortunate to have that opportunity.
Right.
We have been with our pheasant hunting and our deer hunting. I've hunted elk, I've hunted moose, and I enjoyed moose hunting in Canada. I've been up 4 times, I guess, British Columbia and Alberta, and I enjoyed it. But there's nothing like stalking a muley. You know,
That's your passion, mule deer?
Oh yeah, it is. I guess I'm not a real elk hunter because I never really learned how to hunt. You have to learn how to hunt elk. You know, it's not like hunting deer. It's a completely different thing. And when we tried to hunt as younger, we would go over on in eastern Washington over on the Nile or Rattlesnake or those areas. And we would get an elk once in a while, but we were deer hunters. We weren't really elk. We would stumble into an elk once in a while.
Right.
But you have to know what you're doing, just like deer hunting. So that's pretty much why one day when I get old, I wouldn't mind shooting a big elk, but the opportunity will probably never come. You know, I just don't think it ever will. I've been
Never say never.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's true. You hunt the Blue Mountains. We packed in the Blue Mountains for quite a few years, back when it was branched antlered,
Right.
and then it got to be, it wasn't worth the effort to. It's a lot of work to pack animals,
Right.
and it got to be where we didn't feel like it was worth the effort to go through all that, to go in and shoot a spike. Maybe that's not the right attitude, but
Right.
we changed our hunting area and we hunted some different areas, eastern Washington, rather than going there, and had some success. But there again, had I been as devoted elk hunting as I am deer hunting, I'm sure I would have been more successful, and had I spent as much time elk hunting as I do deer hunting. But, that's pretty much why I'm just a deer hunter.
Yeah. Nothing wrong with that. Nothing wrong with that at all.
Yeah.
Well, thank you for your time, sir.
Yeah, you bet. Thank you.
Nice talking to you.
I appreciate it. This is the first 4-point of any size that I got on Blewett Pass in 1979.
1979.
Yeah.
The first 4-point.
Yeah.
Got some
It is-
antelope there.
Yeah. One of those, that one's Gloria's, that antelope.
This is a Montana buck here.
Yeah.
I think I've seen pictures of that one.
Yeah, probably.
Where was this moose at?
That was in Grand Prairie, Alberta.
Grand Prairie. And what is the story on this sheep over here?
Well, I found it.
You found it.
Yeah.
Deadhead. All right.
I found it in Montana. And this bear skull, it's a pretty big bear skull I found on the beach out of Alaska, in Petersburg, Alaska. Now I don't know how it compares to other bears, but it's a Kodiak bear skull.
Cool. What is this? What year is this one say on here?
Gosh, I don't know.
It doesn't have a year.
Doesn't it?
Oh, here we go. 2005, that says. So that's not that far.
A few years ago.
Yeah. That one right there.
This crazy one is an Alberta buck. This is I think this buck I got, yeah, that's an Alberta buck, which was weird.
Oh, wow. You can't even get it off there. It's so intertangled.
I shot that to get it out of the gene pool.
Look how close I can get my finger in between those two top points. That is nuts.
And this deer here, I think, was the deer. This deer here, I think, was the deer I got up at Wolf Creek.
Okay. This is a wide sucker. You got
Yeah.
little extra points on there.
Yeah.
Very nice.
Yeah, there's some weird ones.